I got it. I'm with you. How are we feeling out there today? Good. All right. You guys excited? We got some good dialogue today. We got some awesome results.
Hello, everyone. Just take a breath and exhale. It's okay. Yeah, there you go. There's some good positive energy into the room. I know we're all tense right now, but just exhale. We're here for a good event. We have some phenomenal speakers in here today, and we're excited to kind of learn more and how we can kind of be a better community as well as educate ourselves to take it out there to help someone be a little better. So relax, enjoy. You guys will be a part of this. So don't think that we're just going to come talk at you for an hour and a half or so. You're a part of this, so be welcomed here.
All right, so first I'm going to welcome you all to the Diversity Inclusion Forum. But before we go any further, we have some opening remarks from David Ermoff, Director of Administration of Moorhead Pride. So we'll get him, have him start off the program, and then we'll get right on into our conversation. And today we're going to have a good old conversation. You guys excited? So let's take a second and welcome David to the stage.
Sorry, my voice is probably a little rough. I've been sick for the last couple weeks.
Hello? Here we go.
Yeah, lean into it. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is David Ermoff, and it's my pleasure to be here to speak with you today on and welcome you to the Camden Carroll Library. We couldn't have had this event without the people from the Eagle Diversity Center, without the staff and the members of the Camden Carroll Library. We've had work studies all week long in and out of this room monitoring the quilt, which, from what I understand, hasn't been here since 1991. It was the last time that I understand. So it's kind of an honor to be here today to speak with you in front of the quilt. To me, the AIDS Memorial Quilt is more than just a symbol of remembrance for those that have lost their lives in the fight against AIDS. It is a symbol of the diverse nature of the LGBTQ community and how the struggle with the AIDS epidemic has touched all of our lives. The quilt promotes understanding of the many struggles faced by the LGBTQ community, and it provides a means for us to connect spiritually and emotionally with others. With the exception of Gilbert Baker's rainbow flag, I can think of no other symbol that encompasses the sheer diversity of the LGBTQ community than that of the quilt. While it is vitally important to promote tolerance and awareness in regards to issues of diversity in today's increasingly hostile society, our goal is also to promote acceptance and understanding, which is exactly what the quilt has been able to do since its inception. To many people, the fight for LGBTQ equality is a fight for sameness. But the truth is that the LGBTQ community is diverse, and the needs of the people within our community are just as nuanced and varied as in any other culture. For example, the treatment and experience of a Caucasian gay man and a transgender woman of color can be quite different even within the LGBTQ community. The difficulties faced by the transgender woman in simply using a public restroom is something a gay Caucasian man would never experience. Likewise, the same transgender woman of color would never experience the privilege that our society places on being Caucasian in a male-oriented, heteronormative society. Being treated the same as others simply isn't enough. We need to promote the understanding of our differences, which will ultimately lead to greater acceptance and inclusion. And speaking about this earlier in the week with my husband, he gave me some really good advice. He said we shouldn't treat people the way that we want to be treated. We should treat people the way that they want to be treated. And I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. Recently, many issues have arisen in public discourse regarding some of the most diverse threads of people within the LGBTQ community. Issues surrounding healthcare, adoption, use of public restrooms, and even the participation of transgender members in the military are being scrutinized, denied, and litigated by U.S. courts. Now more than ever, the LGBTQ community needs to show that we are a diverse population and that we will stand for each other as one. In doing so, we need to recognize that it is our understanding and acceptance of one another that is truly what will make us stronger. This year, Moorhead Pride wanted to focus our attention not only on LGBTQ awareness, but we wanted to highlight some of the individual diversity found within the community. The speakers that are presenting today will be sharing their personal stories, their experiences, and their understanding of the work that still needs to be done in regards to addressing the diversity found within the community and making our community more inclusive for all. Our speakers include Mark A. Johnson, who has been a champion of HIV/AIDS, cultural diversity, and health equity for 30 years. John Parker, who serves as the Executive Director for AIDS Volunteers, Inc., also known as AVOL, and author, public speaker, and diversity trainer Ryan Salins, whose book Second Son details the story of his transitioning. With that being said, I wanted to introduce the moderators for today's forum, which is Chris Blakely. He is the Minority Retention Coordinator here at MSU. And Corey Clark, the Minority Academic Services Coordinator, who will be introducing our speakers and getting things started. Again, welcome. And I hope you enjoy today's speakers, and I hope you gain some new insight to consider and to take home to your friends and family.
Thank you for the introduction. It does. So I want to thank you once again for those opening remarks. Really appreciate all his efforts within the community and also the collaborative approach that we have taken today to host this event in the library. Before we get started with the introduction, I want to give a couple of shout-outs. I know they're going to probably hate me for doing this, but I want to give a shout-out to Sarah and David, who have been working behind the scenes to kind of pull this together. And I just want to So, as mentioned, my name is Chris Blakely. I serve as Minority Retention Coordinator for MSU, but also we co-direct the Eagle Diversity Education Center. One of the things we've done over the last year and a half or so, really members of the community here at MSU, we've kind of tried to take the approach of see a need, fill a need. So last October, after a lot of things going on, not just in this community, but regionally and nationally, Corey and I sat down and had a conversation about we got to get people in the room to talk about these difficult topics that we don't want to talk about. How can we do that? So October of last year, we're coming up on an anniversary, which is kind of scary. It feels like yesterday, but October of last year, we launched our initial community conversation with the focus on unity. And the goal of the community conversation were to get faculty, staff, and students and members of the community to come together in this same room to talk about topics that we know people talk about in their silos. But we talk about it in our silos with people that are like-minded, we don't get different perspectives, and so we kind of only have that one vantage point. So the community conversations were a goal to get people of different perspectives in the same room to kind of talk about difficult topics. And so we launched that last October, and then in the spring we had a conversation entitled LGBTQ and You to kind of, once again, have a dialogue about one of those difficult topics that a lot of people are trying to avoid. And from that conversation, we actually had David serve as our moderator, and through that, he's like, hey, we got this event coming up in the fall, we really want to partner together, and we're like, hey, sign us up. So that's kind of how we brought this together. It's like we want to continue to have this dialogue about diversity, inclusion, about just being able to talk about things that may not be familiar with us, to get more knowledge, because we work in institutional higher education. That's our goal, is to gain new knowledge and to be able to pour that to the worlds that we live. So that's kind of how we brought together. So I want to kind of give a little backdrop of how our community conversations initiated, but also kind of give you an idea of what today looks like, and Mr. Clark will explain a little more about that.
And so we're going to get out of here as soon as possible so we get the experts up to speak. So how today's going to go, everybody, if you like to say, if you haven't received the program that look like this, raise your hand, we'll make sure that we get you one. But inside of the program, you will find the bios of each of our speakers, presenters today. And so make sure you take time to read that. But how today is going to go is that we're going to step away from the podium, and each speaker, each presenter is going to have a lot of amount of time to present, and then once they conclude, there will be some time available for the members of the audience to be able to ask questions. And if you're unable to ask your question within the time frame that's allotted, make sure that you hold on to that, because there will be some time at the end where we'll be able to open the floor for questions and be able to have some dialogue. So just to give you an idea about how today is going to work, each presenter is going to have a lot amount of time, and that includes questions and answers, and then we'll open up the floor before we get out of here of individuals to be able to continue that dialogue with questions and answers. And so, without further ado.
So any questions, comments, concerns before we jump into this? I'm real excited for these presenters. David's been, talking about them for like a year now, so you guys got a lot of pressure on you to perform well now. I'm just kidding. But first up, we want to welcome back actually one of our own MSU alums. So we're going to want to make sure that we welcome him home. It's Mark Johnson. As mentioned, he's been a champion for HIV, AIDS, cultural diversity, and health equity for over 30 years. And he has a presentation for you today, and I know it's going to be very inspiring and motivational to us, so we want to kind of welcome him to the podium today. Thank you.
All right, everybody okay? And I'm just real, so I'm probably going to use this wonderful brochure as a fan. I'm going to mail calls, and I got this sweater on, and I'm just going to be honest. I know it was hot, but I didn't iron my shirt. So I'm just real. I just tell it like that. But anyway, there's a true honor to be here today, and I'm thrilled. Thank you, David Moorhead, for inviting me. A lot of memories have come back. I went to the restroom. Things haven't changed. I was here in 1977. Nothing has really changed out there. So it was like old home week, coming back and everything. But when I came to this room and saw the quilt, it brought so much emotion to me. Because the first person that I remember that had HIV and AIDS was one of my best friends that also went to Moorhead. And we graduated in 1981, just a few years ago. But James was one of my best friends. And he went back to Chicago, where he was from, in around 1985, late 85, early 86. He called and told me that he was HIV positive. And at that time, I knew just a little bit, very little about that. But I was here in Lexington, Kentucky, and really didn't know a lot about it and was really afraid for him. But I never called James. We never got back with him or anything like that. So around 87, middle of 87, toward the end, James called and said he wanted to come to visit. So that scared me to death. Me and my friends in Lexington, we didn't know what to do. If he coughed, if he sneezed, that's all we had heard. So I tell folk, and when James came and, we did the best that we could, and about 2 weeks later when he went back home, he passed away. So I always tell folks that if there's anything in life that I regret, is that I probably, in my opinion, wasn't a very true friend to James. I think I could have done a lot more, even though I didn't know a whole lot. So that's the one thing that I can say that I honestly regret is not being a true friend to him. So whenever I do presentations on HIV and AIDS, I dedicate it to James. All right. So this quilt brought back a whole lot of memories and got me real emotional and all that kind of stuff. But I thank you all again for inviting me. Today, I'm just going to kind of speak from the heart. I really don't have an agenda, so I just like to keep it real, and I'm going to leave you some food for thought as we go along today. So the first thing I want to know is, how many of you in this room are prejudiced? Okay, I'm going to see everybody's hands, so everybody raise your hand. Yeah, because we all are prejudiced. That's a good place to start. We all prejudge and are prejudiced about something, and that's where the work comes in. I've been doing sensitivity, diversity, inclusion, social justice work since 1991, and I am not culturally competent yet. It's a process, and it's going to take a while. I'm trying, but it's a work in progress. So as you go daily, you'll find that you have to pick and choose some of the battles that you're going to fight and all that. So it's kind of hard. One of the questions I often get asked from everybody when I do this kind of presentation is, Mark, do you think it's harder to be black and gay, or do you think white and gay? I said, well, in my opinion, I think it would be harder for a black person because I really haven't experienced anything, with the white community. I'm not white, so I wouldn't be able to answer that. But for me, with the African American community, it's very, very difficult because growing up, we have to deal with religion. And always, constantly, being reminded that you don't count, that you don't matter, that you're condemned, that God doesn't like what you're doing and all that kind of stuff. So you deal with that. You have to deal with the machismo and all that kind of stuff, being macho and the manliness. And because if you like to cheerlead, then you're not a man. If you like to be a field commander, then you're not a real man. If you play with dolls, you're not a real man. And all those things you had to contend with as you were growing up. And those are all the things that I did. But in my mind, I was a real man. So when I came to Moorhead State University, it was kind of a refuge for me. I was getting away, I wanted to start that journey to find out who I really was and to live my life and find out, who the other people were just like me, Were there other people like me? So I wanted to find that out. It was also an escape when I came to Moorhead, because I wanted to get away from my high school and my home, where people would call me fag, and that damn queer, and that sweet need person, and that sissy, and that nigger, and that porch monkey, and all those horrible words. So I say, when I came to Moorhead, I'm just going to, get rid of all that. When I came to Moorhead, I did. I was very, very lucky. It was like finding gold. I found one person, and then the doors opened. I found all kinds of people just like me. And so we would play softball, the men against the women. We had a lot of gay people back in 1977 and, through 81. We were just coming out of the woodwork, it seemed like. So we had all of us together, and, we were kind of bullied. Anyway, I thought I was getting away from it, but they would call you names. I still got the nigger, the fag, the queer. So that's why with queer, I really haven't adopted that. We talk about queer nation in the LGBTQ community. That's just not for me yet, because of the connotation and the way it was said to me back in the day. I am just not there. But we had all these wonderful friends who came together and, like I said, played, and we would go, about 15 to 20 of us in the evening would go to somebody's room, and we would drag and lip sync and hoop and holler because we could be ourselves, and throughout the day we were just harassed. Some people were beat up. I was penny locked in my room. Back in the day, I don't know if you used to have those dorms and that where you could stick a penny in the outside and you couldn't get out from the inside. So I was penny locked in my room. I had fag written on the door in toothpaste, which was really difficult trying to get off. There were all kinds of messages. We had water that from the elevator in a big trash can that would tip over, and they would let water come in, flood you out of your dorm room. We had people push down the stairs or cartwheel. It was a nightmare. And with all the name calling and the bullying, it wasn't just white people. There were people of color. And to be honest, I was afraid of my own people. I was afraid of my own people because they were the ones that called me out. And those were the ones that I loved and I thought would have my back. So when I came here to the university, and then a lot of the African-American men, I was afraid if I saw African-American men, I would walk across the street because I did not want to be bullied on that, because I thought they would be the first ones to call me out because of my, mannerisms and my feminism and all that kind of stuff, femininity rather, and all that kind of stuff. So I would cross the street. So I said, this is not right. You need to get over that. You need to do something. So to get over my own fear, I joined a fraternity. And that was a nightmare in itself, but I did it. And I'm very proud to be a part of the fraternity that I'm in, but that was a nightmare. And so I tried out for cheerleader because I had to, come within my own and do that. I've always wanted to be a cheerleader. So I became a cheerleader, and I was very fortunate and everything. And then they put my partner, female, she was African American, which was cool. Where did they put us? Right in front of the section where all the black people sat. And back in the day at Moorhead, we had a whole lot of black folk that were here. And so, my blood pressure rose again because I was in front of a bunch of black folk. And when I dropped my cheerleading partner one time, I thought all the men were going to beat me up. Right? So I was just going through a lot of emotion. It was the same thing. But we had a support group that was kind of an unofficial focus group, because when I said 15 to 20 of us would come together and we would hang out in rooms, we were supportive of one another. We were one because we knew what oppression was like, because we were all in the same boat. So, being in a group and being involved, then you might want to find love, find the person that you're interested in. So there was a person who happened to be Caucasian, and, we started talking and everything, and I just thought this was going to be the love connection and all that stuff, But he told me that there was nothing that a black man could do for him. So once again, within our own community, it was divided. So I knew then that I had a struggle. It wasn't just a heterosexual folk against us, that, racism and all the other isms that are there are right here in the gay community as well. So that was something else that we had to do. So when I left Moorhead, I went to Lexington, Kentucky, thought I was going to do something, find my own. So I joined a lot of different groups. I went to the Fairness Organization, the only black one that was there. Other blacks had tried, but they weren't successful because they didn't feel comfortable in going. I became a part of the Imperial Court. Same thing, only one at the time. Part of PCSO, which used to be with the private GLSO, and same thing. I was the only black, so I became a token. And I got tired of that. But I figured after a while that I would be the token because things needed to be changed. And I'm still the only black person on the PCSO board. The Fairness Committee has nobody, And so we talk about inclusion and bringing people in and all that kind of stuff. Yes, we as African Americans have to do our part too, but our Caucasian brothers and sisters have to do their part as well. In Lexington, 4 years ago, we started what was called the Bluegrass Black Pride Incorporated. And a lot of my Caucasian friends were like, well, why do you want to separate? We don't need something black and all that. And the reason we did it was as an enhancement. to our LGBTQ community, because we as African Americans have a lot of differences that we need to contend with. Our culture is different. We have religion. We have everything in our community that we need to deal with, and we thought if we got that together, then what an enhancement and what a beautiful thing it would be for the entire community. So while we're dealing with this, we also wanted our brothers and sisters, our Caucasian brothers and sisters, to do the same thing, to reach out, to include. You have to walk the walk and you have to talk the talk, all right? You just can't expect us to always come to you to get information. You've got to reach the hand out, you've got to extend the hand, and you've got to go visit people who are different from you. Okay? So you have to walk the walk and you have to talk the talk. Part of the marriage equality, you remember that when it just happened just a few years ago? Well, African Americans weren't really on board with that in the beginning. All right? Because they thought it was GLAAD that kind of put that together, and GLAAD was full of middle to upper class white folk. And they didn't come to the African American community to ask our opinion, to bring us on board or anything. Yet they were using the civil rights movement as one of their things, to get it passed and all this kind of stuff. And black people, gay and straight, got offended because how dare you use the civil rights movement when you didn't even include us in what you were trying to do. So we were really opposed to the whole gay marriage thing and didn't really want a part of it. But later on, around 2005, 2006, that's when we started coming on board. And what happened was GLAAD got a new director, and they started reaching out, asking our opinion, asking us for our advice and how we can reach out to the African American community. They didn't just stay in the tower and expect us to come to them. They actually went out to the community and found us and asked us questions to be a part of it. So I think it's on both of us, or all of us, to reach out to one another to kind of get this thing moving. It's not just the white community, not just the black community, it's all of us, all right? And we all discriminate, and we all have prejudice, and we all need to kind of get over that and move forward, okay? We all have to walk the walk, and we all have to talk the talk, okay? So that's where I want to leave you with at that particular, point, with my verbiage. But I do want you to think about this, okay? Do all of you know about the DL, the download? What is the download? Secret. And that's, one thing with the church is that people really can't be who they want to be, so we have the download. And it's not just in the African American community. White folk are on the DL as well. We have women on the DL, but you hear about it, the DL more so when we started talking about HIV and AIDS, all right? But the download has been around since slavery times because people, let's say I was a slave and I could read, but I would keep quiet and be on the download because I didn't want the master to lynch me, to hang me for being able to read. So the download has been around a long time. It's kind of associated with some of our cultural experience back in slavery time. But when we think about it today, we usually think about African American men who are heterosexual or portray themselves as heterosexual, living with women, and they may have sex with a person of the same sex. All right, so with the DL, we kind of say that's part of the church thing, with people not being able to be themselves. In church, I think a lot of African Americans, and we were talking about it being real hard there for African Americans to come out, it's because religion is supposed to be the center for many of us in the African American community, and we don't want to disappoint our parents, and we don't want to disappoint our ministers because that's the center of everything for many of us. So we just kind of get caught up in that, and I have a lot of my friends who are my age, 58 and above, who are not out yet because they don't want to disappoint their mom, their dad, their minister, their churches, and they may still be playing the piano, they may still be ministering, they may still be directing the choir, but they're gay. But they'll let the minister talk about them, talk negatively about them, and they're not going to heaven. There's no place for gay people in heaven, but they stay there because they like the tradition of our community and of our culture. Okay? Any questions?
Could you speak a little bit about your experience in drag culture?
In drag culture.
The drag.
In drag culture, yes, I am a drag queen, and a few years ago, several years ago when I first started, I would never say that because I lost some friends when I became a drag queen because that wasn't manly, remember? That wasn't something that a man would do, so I lost a lot of my African American friends because I would do that. My husband of 21, well, we just got married 2 weeks ago, but we've been together 21 years. And we got a lot of flack too. So, we would have people who would talk about us because we were doing drag. We'd be called Snow Queen because my significant other was white. And in drag, we're seen as the lowest of the low in the gay community. You know, we'd be the first ones to go out and do all kinds of things to raise money for HIV, AIDS, homelessness, and everything else that you can think of. The first ones that are called upon. You know, but when it comes to being in newspapers and all that, people want you, they think you should be at the bottom of the barrel. Why'd you get a drag queen to represent the community and all that kind of stuff? You know, so drag gets a bad rap in our community as well. So I was talking about the isms, the sexism, the ageism, and racism, all that is still there, you know, and we are affected by that. So drag queens do get a very bad rap. So I want you to think about that. And I want you to think about the quilt and think about the history, because so many of you weren't around when all this was going on, and ACT UP and all the things that we had to do to get the medication with Ronald Reagan as president and all that stuff. You know, all the people and all the lives that we lost, and now we have people, you know, kind of taking it for granted, you know, not getting tested, not staying in care and all that stuff, and not remembering or even thinking about all those people who lost their lives before, who have done anything to have the medications and the support and the help that we have today. So a lot of things, you know, and I know I'm going kind of all over the place, but there's so much to talk about and so much to say about racism and about who I am and about other people in my community. I just wanted to kind of touch on some things to kind of make you think. All right? Any other questions? All right, well, I'm going to end it there. Let me think.
Actually, yeah.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your family and what your experience was with your family growing up?
With my family? Well, my family is very supportive. As a matter of fact, everybody was in the wedding, my nieces and everybody was in the wedding. And so, thank you very much. But when I first came out, you know, I didn't tell my mom, you know, it was secret. You know, so I came to Morehead State University, and I didn't get too far. It was like my second semester. I had a cousin here also. And she would come and tell my mom and everybody else that, you know, Mark's, you know, they called me Tony, is hanging around the wrong kind of people. So my mom came to me and she said, I hear that you're hanging around the wrong kind of people at Morehead. I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, are you gay? I said, no, I'm not gay. And she said, well, it doesn't matter if you are. She said, I love you anyway. And that, and she was ahead of her time, in my opinion. And so, but she did say, would you go to a psychiatrist? And so I said, okay. So we came to Morehead and went to a psychiatrist, went to the psychiatrist, went one time, and he said, you're okay. And he told my mother, you're the one that needs to come back. You know, and ever since can you believe that? So my mom, ever since that, has been on board. She's loved all my friends and my significant others and just everybody. They come to the house, she cooks dinner and all that. So I have a very supportive family. My nieces and nephews call John, my husband, they call him Uncle John, they call me Uncle Bubba. You know, they've stayed with me. My sister and her children have lived with me for a while, you know, and we just tell people we're like everybody else. We have 4 dogs, we pay taxes, we live in a house, we go to work and do everything that everybody else does. And I think the one thing that people have a hard time with is what you do in the bedroom. And what we say is after 21 years, next to nothing in the bedroom. So John wouldn't like that on here. But you know, we just try to keep it real. And but I do have a very supportive family. And when we got married 2 weeks ago, I had never kissed John in front of my nieces, my mom, or anybody. So I was like, oh Lord. And so John and I talked about it. He said, you want some tongue? I said, no. So we did, you know, the kiss and all that kind of stuff, you know. And then afterward, my mom said that was beautiful, you know, and we had never done that. You know, because in the back of your mind, you're still wondering how people are going to accept you, even though I've been me forever, it seems like, you know, since 77. I've always thought I've been out, but remember, coming out is a process. And you're never really there, and even to this day, I get a little nervous in front of African-American men. I stopped going to an African-American barbershop because the men would always talk about those fags and those gay people. And going to a barbershop, you're in there for like 2 or 3 hours waiting to get a haircut. So all the abuse that you go through while you're in a barbershop. So now I go to Great Clips. I don't go through that. So before I left, though, you know, I had to make a comment, you know, and then I didn't go back. Another thing that has been real hard for me has been my voice. You know, can you tell it's a little high? And so I really get embarrassed going through drive-thrus, and it's always something that makes me feel really bad because they will say yes ma'am and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that really triggers everything is growing up is my uncle told me that I needed to change my voice, that I sounded like a fag, and that if I was going to ever mount to anything, that I needed to make sure that I was a man, and that voice is not manly, and you need to get it together. So to this day, when somebody at McDonald's or some of the fast food places that I go through would say, yes ma'am, that haunts me. That comes back. What my uncle said, you need to be a man. You know, you're not going to get anywhere. So no matter how long you've been out and all that stuff, there's all those things that can scar you and things that you remember. So remember that with all the young people that you raise and that are with you, you know, to keep what you say because people remember those things. All right?
Very short. What is your advice to Eagles now? Future Eagles. Eagles.
My advice right now is to be you. you know, and to step outside that old box that everybody talks about, you know, and to get to know other people, extend a hand, get to know your neighbor and your friends and all that kind of stuff, and don't expect others to come to you. There's so much of the world that we need to see and to do, you know, and I bet if you just spend 5 minutes talking to somebody you know, a light can be shown, you know. So I would just say, you know, step out of that box, be you, be real, and get to know somebody else. Well, anything else? I'm going to skip. Take my time.